Am I sharing the right screen? I don't think so.
I see it.
I don't think it was. Oh, it's this one. Yeah, that's Sugriva's story. Blessed by the grace of Shiva, there is one who possesses unlimited strength, and his name is Vali, the brother of Sugriva. In ancient times, when the gods and demons tried to churn the ocean to obtain nectar using Mount Meru as a churning rod, they were unable to move the churner. Vali, on an appeal by the gods, pushed aside everyone and turned the churner until nectar was obtained, which the gods consumed and which gave them freedom from death. For this service, Vali was rewarded with immeasurable strength. He has more energy than the 5 elements in nature, and at one stride could cross the 7 oceans and reach the mountain Charuvala, beyond all the seas. Also, he was blessed with this peculiar favor. Whoever approached him for a fight lost half the strength to Vali, who thus enhanced his own fighting powers. Every day, Vali visited all the 8 directions, worshipped Shiva in all his aspects. When he moved, he was faster than a storm. No lance could pierce his chest. When he strode across the earth, the mountains shook, and the storm clouds parted and dissipated themselves at his approach, afraid to precipitate rain. All nature feared him. Even Yama was afraid to approach where he and his armies camped. Thunder softened its voice. Lions and other wild animals refrained from roaring in his presence, and even the wind was afraid to shake down the leaves of trees. The 10-headed Ravana he once just pushed aside and tucked up in his tail. Vali is elder to Sugriva, possesses the resplendence and cool complexion of the full moon. He is supreme and enforces his authority unquestioned like Yama himself. He was our king, and Sugriva was his next in authority. We were all happy under his rule. Then, as if to destroy the harmony of our whole existence, a demon called Mayavi, with protruding fangs and odious features, appeared in our midst and challenged Vali. The moment Vali rose to fight, Mayavi realized that he had been rash and abruptly withdrew and fled beyond the edge of the world into a subterranean passage. Vali chased him there, determined to annihilate him. Vali had left in a delirium of chase, but paused for a brief moment to tell Sugriva before disappearing into the netherworld. Stay here and watch until I return. 28 months passed. There was no sign of Vali, no news. Sugriva, distraught, decided to go into the tunnel in search of his brother. His counselors and the elders around him, however, dissuaded him, saying he could not abdicate his responsibility, which was to become the ruler of Kiskindha, as Vali must be presumed to be dead. They pushed up all the mountains over the mouth of the cavern in order to prevent, and as they feared, Mavavi's possible return to attack Sugriva also. They left a permanent body of sentries to watch that blocked entrance and installed Sugriva as the ruler of Kiskindha. But in due course, there came out not Mavavi, but Vali. Vali had destroyed Mayavi and was now emerging victorious. He had tried the only exit and found it blocked with rolled up mountains, which enraged him as he thought that Sugriva had been trying to seal him off underground. He kicked the obstacle aside and came out like a tornado. He reached Kiskindha. Sugriva rose to welcome him and to express his joy at seeing him back, but Vali did not give him a chance to speak. He thundered, "So you thought you could enthrone me?" and pounced on his brother and boxed and pounded him in the presence of all the courtiers and officials. Sugriva could get no word in, nor bear the force of his attack. He still tried to speak and explain, but he could make no progress with his sentence, although he began several times. The counselors and elders. Vali seized Sugriva and tried to smash him against the rock. Sugriva managed to slip out of his hands and fled, but was mercilessly pursued by his brother until, though a divine inspiration, He reached this mountain called Mount Matanga, where Valley dare not step in. Sage Matanga had laid a curse on Valley for misdemeanor, that whenever Valley sets foot on this mountain, his skull will burst into fragments, and that none of the immunities granted to him will be effective here. So Sugriva has sought refuge here, but the minute he steps out, Valley has sworn to kill him. When Valley went back, he not only resumed his authority as ruler over the kingdom, which he had really not lost, but also forcibly acquired Sugriva's wife and made her his own. And now Sugriva has neither a home nor a wife. Rama was moved by this story. He was filled with pity for Sugriva and promised, I will help you. Tell me what you want. Sugriva took Hanuman aside and asked, what do you think of his offer to help? Hanuman replied, I have not the slightest doubt that this person can vanquish Valley. Though he has not revealed his true self yet, I sense his identity. He could be none other than Vishnu himself. I notice that he has the marks of the conch and the disc in his palm. None but Vishnu could have bent the bow of Shiva and broken it. None but he could have set upon Tataka and her brood and revived Ahalya from her stony existence. More than all, my inner voice tells me who he is. When I was young, my father, Vayu Bhagavagan, commanded me, you shall dedicate your life to the service of Vishnu. How shall I know him? I asked. He answered, you will find him wherever evil is rampant, seeking to destroy it. Also, when you meet him, you will be filled with love and will not be able to move away from his presence. Now I feel held to the presence of our visitor by some unknown power. I have no doubt who he is, but if you wish to test the power of his arrow, ask him to shoot at the trunk of one of these trees. If the shaft pierces and goes through, you may take it that he can send an arrow through Valley's heart. They went back to Rama. Sugriva requested Rama to give them proof of his archery. Rama said with a smile, yes, if it will help you, show me the trees. They took him along where 7 trees stood in a row. They were enormous, older than the Vedas, and had survived 4 dissolutions of the universe. Their branches swept the heavens. No one, not even Brahma, could measure the distance between the top and bottom of these trees. Rama stood in front of the 7 trees and twanged his bowstring, the resonance echoing through the hills and valleys. Then Rama took out an arrow and shot it through not only the trunks of the 7 trees, but also through the 7 worlds and the 7 seas and all things in 7. And then it returned to its starting point in the quiver. Sugriva was overwhelmed at this demonstration and bowed his head in humility, convinced now that he was in the presence of a savior. On the top of this mountain, Rama noticed a heap of bleached bones and asked Sugriva, what is that? Sugriva told him the story. Dundubi's story. These are the bones of a monster named Dundubi. He was a powerful demon in the shape of a buffalo. He had sought out Vishnu and said, I wish to engage you in a war. Vishnu directed him to Shiva as the appropriate person for such an expedition. Dundubi went to Mount Kailas and tried to lift it off with his horn. Shiva appeared before him and asked, you are shaking our foundation. What is your wish? Dundubi said, I want to fight forever. Please grant me that power. Shiva directed Dundubi to the chief of all the gods, Indra, who said, go down to earth and meet Vali. He is the only one who can fulfill your ambition. Accepting this advice, Dundubi came down and tried to destroy all this part of the earth, shouting foul challenges addressed to Vali. Vali attacked him. Their fight continued for 1 year without break. Finally, Vali plucked Dundubi's horn off his head and gored him to death, and lifting him by his neck, whirled him about, and flung him high into the air. And the carcass flew through the sky and fell down at the spot where Sage Matanga was performing some sacred rites. The sage moved off after cursing Vali for defiling his prayer grounds. Rama ordered Lakshmana, put away those bones, and Lakshmana kicked the whole heap out of sight, restoring the spot its original sanctity. Sugriva now said, I must tell you this. Long ago, when we saw Ravana carrying off Sita in the skies, I must tell you this. Long ago, we saw Ravana carrying off Sita in the skies. We were attracted by her screams, and as we looked up, she bundled her jewelry and threw it down, perhaps to indicate the way she passed. And Sugriva placed before Rama a bundle of jewelry. At the sight of it, Rama was grief-stricken. Tears came to his eyes and he swooned. Sugriva revived him and promised, I will not rest till I find where she is and restore her to you. Rama grieved that he had not protected his wife, the ornaments reminding him again and again of his lapse. Even a common stranger, when he sees a helpless woman taunted or ill-treated, will give his life to save her, but I have failed to protect my wife who trusted me implicitly and followed me into the wilderness, and I have failed her woefully. Thus he lamented, breaking down again and again. Then Sugriva and Hanuman spoke encouraging words. It was very moving to see a warrior and savior in such a state of sorrow. Sugriva and Hanuman elaborated the plan to trace Sita and recover her. Presently, the discussions grew into a council of war, and they planned how they would set forth and search and not rest until Sita was found. Rama lamented, "Oh, human limitation that denies one the far sight to know in which corner of the world of the heavens that monster is holding Sita." Hanuman spoke practically at this point. First thing is the vanquished valley. Sugriva must be firmly established in his seat. Then we can gather our army. We need a big army for this task, as we must search simultaneously in every nook and corner and attack and overcome our enemy before rescuing the noble lady. So the first act to perform is to vanquish valley. Let us go for it. They went through the forest and mountains, fragrant with sandalwood and other trees, and reached Kiskinda mountain. Rama said to Sugriva, "You will now go forward alone and call out Valley for a fight. I will stand aside unseen and shoot my arrow into him at the right moment." Sugriva had now full trust in Rama. He marched to the hilltop and shouted, "Oh, my brother Valley, come on, face me now in battle if you dare." These words resounded through silent forests and entered Valley's right ear while he slept. Valley sat up and laughed aloud. He got up with such force that the base of his mountain sank. His eyes spat fire. He ground his teeth in anger, slapped his thigh, clapped his hands, and the sounds he made echoed through the valleys. "Yes, yes, here I come," shouted Valley, rising from his bed. His voice resounded like thunder through the heavens. The ornaments around his neck snapped, scattering the gems. Tara, his wife, interceded at this moment, pleading, "Please do not go out now. There must be some extraordinary reason why your brother is behaving in this manner." Valley shouted, "Oh, my wife, get out of my way now. Sugriva is just crazy through desperation and loneliness, that's all. Nothing so serious as you fear. You'll see me come back in a moment, drunk with the blood of that brother of mine. He would not ordinarily dare to come your way, but I fear now he must be having some mighty support, which encourages him to challenge you now, so be careful. Dear wife, if all the creatures in the world oppose me, I can face them and wipe them out. Then you know very well. You who have the elegance of a peacock and the voice of a nightingale, listen, have you forgotten that whoever confronts me gives me half his strength? How can anyone escape me? It's only some senseless creature who would offer support to my brother." And now Tara quietly mentioned, "Some persons who are interested in our welfare have told me of a rumor that one Rama has moved into these parts, and he is Sugriva's ally. Rama bears an invisible bow, and it has given new hope to Sugriva. Oh, foolish creature, you are betraying a woman's intelligence and a gossiping tongue. You are uttering a blasphemy for which I have killed anyone else, but I spare you. You've committed a grievous error of judgment and speech. I know about Rama more than you do. I have my own sources of knowledge about what goes on in the world outside. I have heard of Rama as being one possessing integrity and a sense of justice, one who could never take a wrong step. How could you ever imagine that such a person would take sides in a quarrel between brothers? Do you know that he renounced his fight to the throne and undertook the penance of a forest life, all because he wished to see his father's ancient promises fulfilled? instead of uttering his name reverently. How can you slander him? Even if all the worlds oppose him, he needs no strength other than his own Kandanda, his great foe. Would he count on the support of a miserable monkey like Sugriva, even if you assume that he expects to rescue his wife through Sugriva's help? One who has gifted away his birthright to a younger brother. Would he ever employ his prowess to take sides in a family quarrel among strangers? Stay here, my beloved, and don't move. Within the twinkling of an eye, I will be back after disposing of the nuisance named Sugriva. Afraid to contradict her husband any further, Tara stood aside to let him pass. Swollen with the zest for fight, his fingers looked redoubled and struck terror into those who beheld him. As Valley stepped on the arena at the mountainside, uttering a variety of challenges and shouts, all creatures that heard him stood arrested, stunned, and deafened. Beholding that stature of Valley, Rama whispered to his brother Lakshmana, "Is there any comparable spectacle of power in the whole universe, even if you include all the gods, demons, and the elements?" Lakshmana had his misgivings. "I am not certain whether Sugriva is trying to involve you in anything more than an ordinary combat between mere monkeys. I do not know if we should participate in this struggle. How can you trust an ally, one who has not hesitated to intrigue fatally against a brother? Why limit it to monkeys? Strife between brothers is common among human beings too. Instances like Bharatas are rare indeed. We should not become too analytical about a friend, nor look too deeply into original causes, but accept only what appears good to us in the first instance and act on it." While they were thus discussing, Vali and Sugriva clashed. When they separated, dodged, and went at each other again, when their shoulders or feet rubbed together, blinding sparks flew off. Sparks flew from their eyes. They drew blood from each other by scratching and tearing and gashing. The air was filled with their roars and challenges, and their resounding blows delivered to each other. They tried to coil their mighty tails and press the life out of each other. It was impossible to judge their entanglement, who was gaining or losing. To judge in their entanglement, who was gaining or losing. Finally, Sugriva was fisted, kicked, mauled, and beaten so badly that he withdrew, baffled and paralyzed. He found a pause and approached Rama and gasped, "Help me, I can't bear it anymore." Rama said, "While you are at grips with each other, it is impossible to know who was who, and I don't want to shoot you by mistake. Why don't you pluck that wild creeper with its flowers and garland around your neck, so that I can identify you while you're whirled tempestuously about? Now go back to your fight." Sugriva immediately tore off a wild creeper that was hanging down a tree branch, put it on as garland, returned to the fray with renewed hope and vigor, and fell on Valley with a thunderous shout. Valley, pounding down with his fists and feet with derisive laughter, returned the bow and hit Sugriva in the vital centers of his life. Sugriva had little doubt that his end had come, and threw a desperate glance in the direction of Rama. At this moment, Vali grappled him by the neck and waist, lifting him over his head in order to dash him against the rock and end his career. Rama drew an arrow elegantly from his quiver, poised it on the bowstring, and let it go. It sped along and pierced Vali's chest like a needle passing through a fruit. I'm going to pause here.